There was a city that called itself eternal. Marble, law, and iron. Roma. Once its name alone made kings tremble. Yet empires do not collapse overnight. They rot from the inside quietly until one day the rubble tells the story. This is the story of how the eternal city forgot how to stand. At its height, Rome spanned continents. Roads stitched provinces into a single economic heart. Aqueducts carried water across valleys. Legions marched where no law had walked before. Under Trajan, the borders stretched to the Persian Gulf. The empire seemed endless, a living map of Roman order. Power demands upkeep. Every mile of road, every outpost, every frontier cost gold and blood. To preserve peace, Rome paid with coin. To secure loyalty, it paid with land and privilege. The machinery of empire grew heavy. The work of maintaining glory became the empire's first enemy. Rome's legions were once citizen soldiers, farmers who marched for the Republic. Over generations, that changed. Armies became professional and then mercenary. Men fought for pay, not for the idea of Rome. Loyalties shifted from state to general, and where loyalty falters, empires bleed. Inside marble halls, a different rot spread. Senators grew wealthy off tax farming. Public offices became private fortunes. The voice of the people was drowned in gold. When rulers forget restraint, the state becomes an instrument of greed and a brittle peace follows. The 3rd century arrived like a gale. Emperors rose and fell in rapid succession. A generation saw dozens of rulers crowned and cut down. Provincial generals declared themselves emperors. Civil war sapped strength. The empire was increasingly a contest of ambition, not governance. The treasury shrank. Emperors devalued coin to meet payrolls. Inflation stung the poor and eroded trust in markets. Rural estates were abandoned. Trade routes, once the empire's arteries, clogged with insecurity. Money lost value. Society lost cohesion. Disease struck where armies had carried people and dreams. Recurrent plagues in Antonine, Cyprian emptied villages. Workforce shortages made maintenance impossible. With fewer hands, aqueducts failed, roads slipped, and towns decayed. The human cost echoed across borders in decades. Beyond Rome's walls, peoples pushed from hunger and climate change. Goths, Vandals, Saxons, Franks. Their movements weren't always conquest. Often they were migrations seeking survival. Rome's boundaries, maintained for centuries by force, began to bulge and snap. From the steppes rode a new terror, the Huns. Swift horsemen and ferocious tactics shattered frontier defenses. Their pressure displaced other tribes, setting off cascading movements that crashed against Roman borders like storms against cliffs. In crisis, Rome tried to mend itself. Diocletian divided the empire to create more responsive government. He restructured tax systems, reinforced legions, and elevated bureaucracy. For a time, the machine functioned again, but division also made unity fragile. Then Constantine converted to Christianity and legalized the faith. The imperial center shifted. Temples closed and basilicas rose. Christianity offered spiritual cohesion, a new language of belonging, even as traditional civic ties loosened. Religious transformation changed Rome's public life. The city's focus shifted from public duty and civic ritual to spiritual salvation. That shift strengthened souls but changed how power moved, often redirecting loyalty from state institutions to church leaders. Peasants tied to the land, artisans burdened by taxes, and landholders protecting rentiers, social bonds frayed. The great middle layer of the Roman world thinned. Where civic engagement once stabilized society, personal survival replaced public devotion. Urban centers, once vibrant with law and commerce, grew hollow. Without maintenance, sewers clogged, walls crumbled, and roofs fell in. Cities became easier to storm and slower to resist. The symbols of Roman order, forums, baths, libraries, decayed into their own monuments. In 410, the Visigoth king Alaric entered Rome's gates. For 3 days, the eternal city was looted. Temple doors were torn, statues toppled, treasures taken. The fall was not only military but symbolic. The unthinkable had happened. Empire had become vulnerable. Leadership splintered. Some rulers fought bravely to hold ground. Others sought personal advantage. In the West, emperors became puppets crowned and uncrowned by warlords. When leadership loses legitimacy, cohesion becomes impossible. Tax burdens grew as public coffers emptied. Landowners converted tenants into near serfs to guarantee production. Smallholders vanished. Rural retreat intensified. Underpopulated fields, fewer markets, less food. The economic backbone crumpled. Rome's cultural center migrated east. Constantinople rose with new wealth, new courts, new artistic life. Latin remained, but Greek influence dominated. The old Roman identity slid into regional variants. The empire's soul diffused across a changing map. In the mid-5th century, the Vandals crossed into North Africa, Rome's breadbasket. Loss of grain supplies was catastrophic. The Western Empire could no longer feed its cities or pay its armies. The strategic heartbeat had been cut. In 476, Odoacer deposed Romulus Augustulus. The last boy emperor's exile marked an end. Not a spectacle of fire and siege, but a bureaucratic replacement. Power had shifted to local warlords and kings. The symbol of imperial rule vanished. But the fall was also a transformation. New kingdoms arose. Germanic kings ruled hybrid courts mixing Roman law and tribal custom. Feudal bonds and local power replaced centralized bureaucracies. The structures changed. People adapted. East of the Adriatic, Romanity continued. Constantinople preserved Roman law, administration, and artistry for centuries more. The Roman story did not end. It evolved. Byzantium kept Roman memory alive even as Western Europe reorganized. Rome's architecture and law survived in fragments that built medieval Europe. Roads still guided merchants. Legal codes informed kings. Language shaped tongues. The ruins became repositories of memory, stones that taught later generations how to build and to rule. What causes an empire to fall? The list is long: external pressure, disease, economic strain, political decay. But there's a lesson that outlasts the causes. Institutions fail when people stop believing in them. Pride corrodes, complacency spreads, and inertia becomes destiny. Roman law, language, and urban design echo still. Courts borrow Roman phrases. Modern capitals recall Roman grids. Even today, the idea of citizenship and rights carries a Roman imprint. The empire's bones remain in our public life. Beyond institutions and armies, the fall meant human dislocation. Families moved, crafts were lost, literacy declined in places. Yet from those upheavals rose new cultures, languages, and institutions, unpredictable, messy, human. Historians will always argue the final cause, but perhaps the truth is a tapestry. Each thread, plague, money, migration, politics, wove together until the tapestry tore. The fall of Rome is the long conversation between contingencies and choices. Walk the Forum today and you hear the ghost of assembly speeches, the echo of sandals on stone. The ruins stand not to mourn a past empire, but to remind us that greatness requires tending. Stone remembers what people forget. Rome fell not in one thunderous moment, but in 1,000 small silences. An empire's end is always a human story of adaptation and loss. If this descent through marble and memory moved you, subscribe to the History Frame, where we listen to history's echoes, one frame at a time.